Hi guys, how are you? So nice to connect to you. Welcome to this channel and welcome to this video. My name is Laura. This is Pleiadian Healer from PleiadianHealer.com. And today we are going to be talking about a very important topic, which I think could be of interest to a lot of people, or which some people may or may not have their own experience with, and which some people may be going through, as you may or may not be losing people around you right now in the sense of actual deaths. Could be related to 2020, could just be related to other things like accidents and so on. So today we're going to be talking about the tunnel of light concept and being recycled over and over again, being lured to reincarnate into the next lifetime, or just in general going through the reincarnation trap, through the recycling trap. I know there are quite a few videos out there already by other people, and a lot of them are obviously by New Age trap specialists, so New Agers who are telling you to perhaps go down that tunnel of light. Religion, specifically Christianity, also likes to tell people that you need to go down there and then you're going to be in heaven or whatever. But let's just pull up an image of this wonderful tunnel of light just so we have it as a reference, while I'll just share my own insight and thoughts. So this would be a perfect example of the tunnel of light that some people may be experiencing, especially if you had like a near-death experience already, which I'm sure some of you may have had, you know, when you were in a hospital or had an accident or whatever already. So near-death experiences are basically exit points that you set yourself. And those can just be that you have more than one during a lifetime. Typically, people have more than one during a lifetime. You know, they have like an exit point when they're a certain age, and then you can decide, okay, do I want to still be in this body, or do I literally just want to kind of exit this world somehow? There's nothing freaky about it. I myself have experienced at least one exit point as well. I talked about it in a live, I think 1 or 2 years ago. It had to do with the car accident and everything. So in and of itself, there's nothing freaky with an exit point. Is it all free will? I don't think so necessarily. They're just kind of giving us these options for us to take. Let's put it that way. But exit points, in the essence of it, are points in your life when your soul can decide, I want to pass on, I want to die, and move on to what's next. And what's typically next is getting stuck again in the next lifetime, being reincarnated in yet another body in the same reincarnation trap, in the same world that we're currently in. So let's just go through some concepts. Let's just go through the concept of, you know, so we're living our lives right now in whatever reincarnation you're living at, whether or not you're a man, a woman, a child, an adult, a teenager. And so we're living our lives mostly predetermined by others, though. I do want to point that out. So how much your life is your own free will really be up to you, how awake you are, awake to the concept that you are able to manifest a whole lot of things in your life. You are able to break out of that box that's given to you from day one, you know, depending on the country you're born in, the culture you're born in, all of those things. It can be extremely hard to break out of that, right? So language barriers are a huge one when you're born in a country that doesn't speak, for example, English or other languages that are pretty universal, like Spanish or French or whatever. It can be very hard to kind of having to teach everything, or going to school and having to do all of those things. And sometimes you may be born in a country, let's just be very extreme, like Africa or in a third world country, where you're not even going to have the means to really break out of that unless you really, really want to, right? So it's kind of a life against all odds is what I'd like to call that. So there's a lot that goes into that, but I do think a lot of our lives are predetermined by other entities around us, by other controllers that control this matrix game. A lot of us are being kept down. You know, we have like this full blooming potential from day one that we're born into this world. Like we can basically be the top doctor out there if you want to be that. You can be a top lawyer out there if you really want that. You can make a flowing income with the travel business, all of that. But unfortunately, a lot of our people who have souls, so a lot of these souls, not talking about clone bodies or robotoids or whatever, but actual souls are being kept down severely as soon as they discover their passion and have a little bit of success in it, because the controllers don't want you to basically live a life that's really meant for you. They want to siphon off your energy and harvest your energy and incorporate it into the corporate system, which is like corporate companies, or like the rat race is what I like to call it, especially here in New York. They used to call it the rat race, meaning like working 14 hours a day or 16 hours a day. And that was great because you're pretty much like, you don't have a life outside of that, right? So all your energy goes into work, or when you're very young, it goes into school, into basically just, you know, being in the program at the instance of it, being under their control. And that's basically what they want. They don't want you to think outside of the box. They don't want you to even have time to kind of connect to your own soul essence and everything. So you're living these lives that are basically predetermined from the start, right? And some generations, like the World War II generation or World War I generation, has really get to know what that means, because the trauma that's being carried forward when you've experienced a type of war of that magnitude, just those kind of things, really has an effect also on the generations that are to come. You know, you have like people being poor after that, people starving because of food supplies just not being there, and a whole bunch of other things. So there's a lot that goes into a life in and of itself. We can cover the concept of life and how we're being kept down in a different video too. I just wanted to briefly discuss it. And so it's predetermined by others. It actually also, a life, I want to point this out, should be way longer than we're given right now. We had lifetimes where we were able to turn maybe 1,000 years old, or like perhaps even longer than that, you know, because time in and of itself is very fluid. So nowadays they only want us to be 60, 70, 80, 90, maybe 100 years old. If you hear of someone who turned 100 years old or 110 years old, that's already making the news most of the time, because a lot of people, sure, some already pass away when they're 20, 30, 40. I'm aware of that. That has to do with exit points and other things. But for a lot of people, they just kind of want you to be in this corporate rat race until you slowly and surely fade away, until your body fades away. And that typically tends to happen around, well, it depends on you, how well you keep your body up and everything, and how much you maybe exercise, or the nutrition you take. I do think nutrition is actually almost more important than exercise too. Exercise is important, but I don't really believe in what the gym is selling us as exercise, the entire muscular, you know, weightlifting and everything. That's not really exercise for me. But for me, what's even more important is actually nutrition and the nutritious value that we basically are not even receiving anymore with the current food that we're being given in the supermarkets and also restaurants and everything. So we're being given all these things, and also the toxins in the air being sprayed left and right with nanos and AI, also known as the chem, and then the trails. So we should be turning way older than we already are, but people get dementia because of that, you know, because of aluminum in their food or whatever's in the air. Or maybe just because it's also a predisposition in one form or another, you know, something carrying over in genetics. But I think mostly it has to do what's really outside of us that gives us all these illnesses and ailments. And so you're in the corporate rat race. You're supposed to be in that corporate rat race until you're like 60, 65, or 67. And then you're supposed to be retiring. But at that point, your body's already not, I mean, you still have a body, but for most people, their body's really not what it was when they were 20 or 30 years old, right? And you're tiring too, you know, you maybe have to sleep longer or take naps during the day. So what a life they really have for us, instead of when we were able to turn older, like a few hundred years old, or maybe up to 1,000 years old, we were able to do so many more things. People were able to have children when they were 90 years old or even 200 years old. You know, so just what we were able to accomplish in like 1,000 years, or maybe even just a few hundred years of lifetime, was way more than if you only turned 50 or 60, 70, 80, 90 years old, obviously. So they're giving us these lives, and aging is a program. I do want to make a different video on that. Unlike Dolores Cannon says, which I kind of dissected her untruths and new age programs in a different video, we did not volunteer to come here. I have a video series on how we were tricked to come here, and basically we were lured to come here. This was eons ago, could have very well been like 1 billion years ago. But for me, the time frame right now is not much of an essence, because they're messing with our time to such an extent that right now we even feel we're running out of time, or we're aging more quickly than we used to like 10 years ago. So it could have been 2,000 years ago, it could have been 1 billion years ago, however long it was that we were tricked to come here on this earth realm. We just kind of forgotten ourselves so much in the game that they provided us, the video game, the Matrix game. And, you know, every time we enter, something's being done to our capabilities of remembering. So basically it's the veil that comes over and over and over again. And we've completely forgotten ourselves in the game. I do think a lot of it has to do with Atlantis too, and the AI that was created during that time. Other beings who maybe came later, maybe just a few hundred years ago or whatever, they could have been tricked here under different pretenses, or some people commented on my video saying they think they were enslaved here, like literally dragged from a different system somehow over here. That could have been. I know for me that wasn't necessarily the case. I definitely came here with a group of beings or souls, and we were all kind of tricked to come here. It was sold to us as a nice vacation time on Earth, which that turned into a very long vacation. And so then we're at the end of our lives, however old we are. We could be very well only a teenager. We could very well be 100 years old. However old we are, though, that's when we pass away, be it under natural causes or unnatural causes. And so this is where the game starts over and over again. So you've lived this life, which for a lot of people has been very difficult, and they are making our lives more and more difficult. The more we progress in the game. I do think perhaps a few hundred years ago, our lives weren't as difficult as now. Now we're being bombarded with, you know, cell phones, Wi-Fi, EMF, with a whole bunch of distractions. We can barely even hold our attention on the screen for more than like a few seconds until ADHD is all over the place, right? Even in adults. So it's a bit extreme what we're being bombarded with right now. I do think it may have been easier for my grandparents' generation for sure, because having less could also equal being more happy in a weird, twisted way, which you see that a lot in third world countries, right? Like the people that actually have the least amount of electronics and the least amount of money are the happiest, because they just they're working with what they have. And so the more abundant our nations get, or the more stuff that's being thrown at us and sold as us that we need, you know, like kids need an iPad and yada yada, the more trapped we kind of become in this reality through our soul pieces also being trapped in these electronics, and our attention's going away, attention spans for sure. So we're at the end of our life and we pass away. And then typically, from what I've gotten so far, however, this doesn't happen all the time. I also want to point that out. I've seen that very clearly with people who have taken their very own life. It doesn't happen all the time that you see this tunnel of light. Sometimes your soul is so confused, especially if you have, you know, taken your own life, because that's usually very traumatizing experience, as I mentioned in a different video. Your soul is like so confused that somehow this black comes over you somehow. Sometimes they could see the tunnel of light and just not go towards it because they're kind of freaked out by it. But at the end of the day, you see something like this. whether or not it looks like this exactly, or if it's just like a ladder leading up to something that resembles light, or if it's really like something that even resembles source that they want to sell to us as source, you kind of have to just see it as another matrix construct that they're pushing on you. Now in this picture, it's a man going towards the light, but obviously the gender doesn't matter. But yeah, so you're supposed to be going towards the light. I do feel they may be pushing like this false sense of love and happiness once you get closer and closer to the light, which on a soul level kind of entices you to go closer. Let's put it that way. So they're having a whole bunch of programs around the light and the tunnel of lights, you know, like life after death and everything. Some people have said they've seen Jesus, which is just another entity that's saying they're Jesus, but they're really not Jeshua, who was reincarnated here. Some people say they see angelic beings with wings, ascended masters, perhaps, if you're really into that. A big one is seeing relatives that passed on already, though. So, for example, if you had like a mother or dad, a child or a grandparent or whatever already pass away, you might see a version of them. I really highly doubt it's them, though. I do want to point that out too. They may seem like them, but it could very well be just like a gray or an interdimensional entity and being that is basically just putting up a front, like having a mask on and pretending it's them, because the chance is very high that your relative already reincarnated in the next body and their soul is not really kept in the astral in that way. So what I've also heard from some reports of people who had a near-death experience, there was this one boy who saw Jesus and everything. He was pretty good. Like 20 years ago, his story was really pushed. And that's how you also know when all these things are pushed in the mainstream media, not just the New Age movement, but also mainstream. That's how you know they want to trap you there. But this boy who was maybe 6 or 7 years old he saw Jesus, and that everyone looked very, very young in heaven, or once he passed the tunnel of light or whatever. Also a whole lot of animals. Now I posted something recently on my social media saying that animals actually do have that pure connection to source, and you can sometimes see it in their eyes as well, unless they're not entity possessed. But I kind of doubt that you would be. I mean, the animals that you see are not really the animals that really have that source connection. So it's probably just another projection of an animal or whatever. So they're throwing all this stuff at you. And I'm just mentioning all these so that you kind of know what to expect. Okay. But in the essence of it, you're going to see a tunnel of light like we see here in the picture. You might see a whole lot of these other beings, like deceased loved ones. Everyone could very well look very young, because young and not aging is, you know, it corresponds with being attractive and being liked and wanted and everything. So it's not surprising that everyone is supposed to be young once you pass on. They will try to lure you down, you know, like I said, with this fake feeling of love and peace and happiness, and you're going to have it so good once you come down here, and it's so great to be here. Like all those other deceased loved ones are going to be waving at you and trying to lure you down, being like, it's amazing to be here. So they really are going to be throwing a whole bunch of stuff at you. Okay. And then you're going to be somewhere, which is going to be different for different types of people. It could be a resting place. It could very well be what they want to sell you as heaven or whatever. For some people, if you believe in hell, you might very well end up in a version of hell, you know, somewhere where it just feels like hell with a lot of fire around you, like the underworld experience, but then you're going to get out of that. From some reports, you might have to judge yourself and the life you led. And then it always comes back to, oh, you weren't good enough in the previous life. So you have to come back and rectify something, rectify karma that you have with other people or other souls. You maybe have to help other people out in the next lifetime that are still stuck here in this life, you know, so you have to reincarnate pretty much right away. The reincarnation from what I've understood, can happen for some people, because time is completely irrelevant. Like you could have been in this resting space for like hundreds and hundreds of years, but you might very well reincarnate like the exact same second that you died, because time is such an illusion. It doesn't matter how long you were basically gone. So you can reincarnate the same day, you can reincarnate years after, or even generations after. It can be the same gender you had before, it can be a different gender, it can be a similar body. Oftentimes we do have similar facial structures, or just like the body that we had before, like just the bone structures too. I've seen that with a few of my past lives, where like my cheekbones were always pretty similar. Oftentimes my hair color was always very similar too. So I had a mix of like brown, brunette, but also blonde past lifetimes. And that's why I think I also like to add blonde highlights into my hair a lot in this lifetime. I've been doing that for almost 10 years. You could also be of a completely different ethnicity. You know, if you were white Caucasian before, you could have been like African or African American in the next life, or you could be Asian, whatever. But your aura always stays the same. So your auric field, your charisma is always going to be similar from lifetime to lifetime. And we also carry our DNA with us. So your DNA holds a lot of those past lifetimes and memories in it. I do want to point that out, which is also why they're trying so hard to get to our DNA through these most recent injections and other things that they put in the air and everything. They're trying to change our DNA, switch it up, because you have so much power in your DNA if you really are a soul. That once they modify it, they're going to modify your past lifetimes and all the stuff you did in that. You know, a lot of powerful stuff happened during the Roman Empire, for example. A lot of it is rewritten and forgotten, and a lot of powerful stuff happened during Babylonian times, just those kind of things, right? So you could even reincarnate as an animal or a pet. I know of people who were dogs in previous lifetimes and then they came back as a human again. I don't really know how they trick people into doing that, though. I would be quite curious to know how. If someone remembers, comment below. You know, everything goes, every piece of imagination goes here on this channel. It doesn't matter to them what you reincarnate as. I do want to point that out. As long as you are in the system again, and as long as they're getting the energy from you somehow, you're going to have the purpose of feeding into their system and of being able to provide them with the energy that they can siphon off. You know, it's basically they need to feed off of souls being back in the system, and they can't feed off of your soul necessarily once you're in that in-between state, you know, once you're supposed to go through that tunnel. Although the realities they are trying to build up right now with the injections are such that they are creating all these different realities with your soul pieces if you have taken the jibbity jabbity Jew. So I think it's another version of evil that they're trying to roll out, another version of AI to trap you here continuously over and over again. I'm not saying if you've taken the injection, you're going to be trapped continuously, but if you're not aware of what they're doing, the chance is very high that you're never going to really get out, because you need to be aware of, first of all, what's going on, and second of all, not to go towards the tunnel of light. So in the essence of it, that's what's going on with the tunnel of light. And karma is just another trap. Does karma exist? It does. If you spell karma backwards, it's Amrak, by the way, which there's another meaning behind that too. But a lot of these concepts, I think it's an Indian word too, a lot of these concepts have been highly hijacked, you know, so the original meaning of karma is different than that they're pushing onto us right now. Most of the times karma is associated with negativity as opposed to positivity. There's also positive karma. Karma is a neutral word. It's not good or bad necessarily, but what is being turned into right now is used to their own agenda. And you don't really have to have karma with other people. They're just trying to say, oh, you have karma with this person, and that's why you need to date this person in this lifetime or marry this person to fulfill your karma, or you need to become this and this person to fulfill your karma. Like that's just another thing, how they predetermine your life or try to predetermine your relationships and lives too. So yeah, so once you kind of pass on, you know, this might be interesting to know if you have someone like a relative who's like almost about to pass on and die, or you know, if you have an older grandparent or whatever, like what I would definitely tell them if I had the chance to talk to them somehow on their deathbed, I would definitely try to prepare them and say, so you might see this tunnel of light, but just don't go down there. Okay. Just try to resist the tunnel of light. What are these solutions? I think if we all had these solutions already, we wouldn't be here watching this video, or in my case, recording this video. But I have a strong sense that once you're aware of this concept, it's going to be very hard for them to trick you down there. And so what I kind of feel is you can either go maybe the opposite direction, meaning not back into your body, but kind of like go away from the tunnel of light. You can also try to envision, show me what's behind the tunnel of light, like kind of like pull away the veil from this tunnel of light. Perhaps just create a different reality somehow that gets you away from the tunnel of light, or kind of just maybe stand still and not try to go anywhere. If I were to talk to my relatives or people who are close to me, what I actually would tell them, because I know a lot of those, I mean, a lot of them don't really watch my channel. A lot of them don't have the same awareness that you and I do. You and I have, but I would probably tell them to just, can you just wait for other people to pass on, you know, for maybe me to pass on until we're at least like a group in the afterlife somehow, instead of going down the tunnel of light. That's maybe something I would suggest, just to wait around. But I would definitely tell them not to go down the tunnel of light. I would maybe tell them just to wait somewhere and maybe be in between. Whether or not they're really going to do that, I'm not sure. Obviously, it's beyond any means of control what other souls do. There are a few different theories on other people's videos or channels what to do in that case, but I feel we just don't really have the answers to that yet. We can always intuitively read on it. Intuitively, to me, it kind of feels like maybe you can just skip on over into a different reality somehow. Maybe you can kind of bypass this entire tunnel thing altogether by just going somewhere completely different, you know, or kind of holding tight and not being dragged into it. Or kind of set the intention you want to go back to source, the purest form of source. That's another one that I would probably also set, and then kind of hope they're not going to drag you towards the fake source somehow. Now, I did get insight in a different video 2 years ago that source in and of itself could also very well be hijacked. I know it's triggering to people who think they always have the option to go back, but it would make sense, because otherwise we wouldn't be stuck here the way we are stuck. You know, it's almost like we can't go back to where we came from, and that's why we're stuck here. And then AI took over and it is in control, and that's why we're still here. So I think I covered all major points of what I wanted to cover in this video. Don't get lured down the false tunnel of light. Why is it a false tunnel of light? Because the light behind it is false. It's not meant, the light is supposed to represent source and whatever. That's not what it is, though. It basically just drags you back here into the reincarnation trap, into another lifetime. And the more you reincarnate, I mean, it is true that we might wake up sooner than we did in this lifetime and all of that. It's just so unnecessary, right? You just don't want to even do that anymore, perhaps. Or maybe some people do. Maybe some people enjoy reincarnating here over and over again. But it seems it's just going to get tougher and tougher from what we can see how the previous hundreds of years were already, that you maybe just don't want to do that anymore. Maybe you just want to be in a different reality somehow, or a different type of earth or heaven or whatever, just not the false one. So if you have any thoughts or comments, let me know. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you so much for your support as well. And if you have any more concepts that you want to cover, also let me know. I'm always open to making videos like these, because I think they're very important for both people who are in the New Age trap movement and also in the religion trap movement and everything, because this concept really is pushed in on all levels. You know, it's pushed in the mainstream, and it's pushed in every single cult movement or just fake movement out there, that it is quite important to point out why and what to do. All right, you guys, have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for everything you do. Talk to you then. Until then, bye.